A warm welcome to all of you. My name is Alpana Sagwal. I handle the post-sales marketing activities at Springer Nature for India. On behalf of Springer Nature and DeLCON Consortium, we thank you for joining us today. And we do hope that you and your families are keeping safe and healthy, as these are trying times, we all know. Well, as you're aware, this is a 3-webinar series which is being organized by Springer Nature for DeLCON members. DeLCON is a DBT e-library consortium, a biomedical life sciences consortium, and it is operational since 2009. All the DBT labs and institutes in the Northeast are part of this consortium, and we have Dr. D.D. Lal, the coordinator and administrator. He has joined us today. He will be talking more about the DeLCON Consortium in a while. And at Springer Nature, we have Vikash Kumar, Director, Institutional and Corporate Sales. He is responsible for all the activities related to DeLCON Consortium. As I mentioned, Dr. D.D. Lal will talk about this in a while. But I would like to talk about this 3-webinar series that Springer Nature is conducting for DeLCON and for the Biomedical Life Sciences community, research community. As you can see, the theme of the series is all about scientific publishing, trends, nuances, tools, ethics, etc. This is a package of 3 webinars, 3 sessions that we have planned. And we are grateful to Dr. D.D. Lal and DeLCON Consortia authorities for giving us this opportunity to present these effective online sessions for the research community. Well, the first one is today, and the second is on 9th and 16th. I will talk about that towards for the second and third towards the end. But regarding today's session, the topic, as you can see on the slide, is trends in biomedicine and life sciences publishing and nuances and tools of scientific publishing. Well, quite often than not, when we conduct these sessions, we conduct a lot of such sessions for our research community. And we see that attendees raise questions like, this is my research area, so which journal should I approach? Or do you have journals in, let's say, genetics or neurosciences or virology? So we see such kind of questions coming from attendees. So while we were brainstorming on the agenda of what content we should present in this webinar, we thought it is a nice idea if our medicine and life sciences team can come together and present some program highlights, what we have at Springer Nature and what is there where you can publish. What are the new journals in these areas we are coming up with? So hence, we approached our global journals medicine life sciences team because DeLCON is a medicine life sciences consortia. And believe me, they were really forthcoming in accepting the invitation. And here we are today, all set for the day. Not only these speakers will talk about the program highlights and new journals that we have in the areas of medicine and life sciences, they will also cover trends in publishing, like open access, article metrics, sustainable goals, etc. And later in the day, towards the next session is about nuances and tools of scientific publishing. So here our speaker will talk about the beautiful journey of article writing to submission to a publication strategy. And she will also cover some tools that would be important as an author for you and might come handy in your academic and research work. So I think all set for the day. A lot of learning is on the way. Hang in there, stay tuned. Before I start the session, so I would like to run some protocols with you. For these, as you can see on your slides, this is kind of a panel you can see right now on your screen. For the seamless conduct of the webinar, we have kept all the attendees on mute mode because that's so that we have the effective session conduct. However, if you have any questions, we have a chat box. You can see there's a chat button. You can post your questions there. We have 2 dedicated Q&A rounds in this session today. And I request you to please keep posting your questions. Do not wait until the end. I have my colleague, Mr. Varghese, who is managing the chat box and he's continuously monitoring it. So please do not wait till the end to post any questions if you have, so that we save on time and we have them handy for the speakers when they start the Q&A round. And we will run some live polls in the second session, and I request your full participation. And needless to mention, please put off all your applications on your browsers or mobile devices so that you do not face any bandwidth issue. All the best for the session. This is the agenda, though I have really talked about it, but just to give a structure to it, we have the first talk, a welcome address by Dr. D.D. Lal, the DeLCON coordinator. Then we have an opening remarks by Dr. William Curtis, who is Executive Vice President for MLS Journal Springer Nature. Then we have the talk about trends in publishing, which I was just mentioning about, and Springer Nature program highlights. That will be delivered by Jacco, Pooja, and Peter from the MLS Medicine and Life Sciences team of Springer Nature. Then comes the first round of Q&A, which is about 15 minutes. And later we have the nuances and tools of scientific publishing, packed with the second round of question answer, which will be taken by our executive editor, Dr. Mamta Kapila from the MLS team. And the day will end with a vote of thanks by Dr. Didi, the DeLCON coordinator. So that's the agenda set for the day. All the best to you, and I really hope that the session will be very beneficial for you all. To start, I would now like to invite Dr. Didi Lal, the DeLCON coordinator, so that he can give the welcome address. And sir, I'll make you presenter since you wanted to present this website. Allow me a minute, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Butler. A very good afternoon to all the universities, participants, faculties, scientists, researchers, DeLCON nodal officers, library professionals, students, and all participants. Welcome you all. I am Dr. Didi Lal, the DeLCON coordinator for the Digital Consortium, as well as I am the head of the NBRC library. Nowadays, the online and e-learning is the only mode where we are sharing our experiences and learn the new skills, new techniques through webinar, and which is the effective mode of learning nowadays during the corona pandemic. Okay. And government also taken so many initiatives for the promotion of the online and e-learning. Okay. So now I again welcome you all on the behalf of NBRC DeLCON and Springer Nature in this webinar on the trends in biomedicine and life sciences publishing and nuances and tools of scientific publishing, which is an important topic for today webinar. This webinar will cover all about research portfolio highlights covering all the life science journals, life science subjects, and all essential of the scientific writing, how to look for suitable journals of interest, journal of interest, journey of an article, Springer Nature tools for the level for authors and author services. We have invited various speakers from the Springer Nature for this webinar. Ms. Alpana Sagwal, she is the account development manager of that Central Asia Springer Nature, will intimate and inform about that speakers, all the speakers. As you may aware that this webinar is jointly organized by the Springer Nature, NBRC and DeLCON Consortium, and here I would like to give some small information about the NBRC as well as the DeLCON Consortium. Let me share my screen for that NBRC. So NBRC, basically NBRC is the National Brain Research Center, which is a autonomous body of the Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India. Until I am not able to share my screen. So,
we were able to see your screen, sir.
Okay.
You have earlier we were able to. Now you have to click on allowing. Yeah, now we can see, sir.
Now you are able to see that NBRC?
Yes. Yes. Yes, sir. Yes.
So the mandate of NBRC is the pursuing basic research to understand the brain functions and brain structure in the area of health and disease. And as you know that for brain research, there are so many problems in the brain, like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, psychological problem, brain stroke, brain cancer. So there are so many problems. These are we are studying and we are understanding and we are doing research at NBRC, National Brain Research Center. And another mandate is generating trained human resources with the capacity to carry out interdisciplinary research in neuroscience, promoting neuroscience in India through networking among institutions across the country. We have two types of courses. One is PhD and another is integrated PhD program at NBRC. There are 18 digital research institutions in all over India, and the digital institutions, including NBRC, also involved to search and generate vaccine for the coronavirus. So here is the website. So you can see the NBRC website. It is beautiful campus available in that NBRC Manesar under Aravalli Valley. It is 30 kilometers away from Gurgaon and 80 kilometers away from Delhi. So here, Millet and Vision India, our director is Professor Neeraj Jain, and Genesis Life of NBRC Annual Review and publications. What are the publications are there? What are the scientific facilities we have? And which academic things means PhD and integrated PhD, MSc program, whatever is going. So you can go through that our website. So now I'm going to share that DeLCON website. So regarding that further, I would like to just inform you about the DeLCON Consortium, which is a national consortium for biotechnology of the Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India, which mandate is to promote data faster and cost-effective way to provide the information resources, avoid duplication of subscription, rational use of funds, saving the electronic access of the library resources to the consortium member. And currently, there are 35 members who is the part of this DeLCON consortium, and 21 foreign publishers are providing 1,000 plus online journal, online resources in this consortium. This DeLCON consortium also provides research article and paper through interlibrary loan to all over India with free of cost for the research and educational purpose. For more information, you can see I have shared that DeLCON consortium website. So here is it. You go to the members, you will see the 35 members. 18 are the digital institutions and remaining 13 are the Northeast institutions. So you can go through our website, you will see all details about that DeLCON consortium. Further, before I start the presentation by the speaker, here I would request to the all participants to kindly switch off your mobile or make in the silent mode, and so without disturbance you will see the all the presentation and you will listen the speakers. So those who have a key, they can raise their hands and they can write in the chat box. Thank you for your interest, patience and participation in this webinar. Now I again welcome you all the speakers. Now I will hand over to the Aggarwal. So she will inform about the speaker and she will introduce about the speaker. Over to Aggarwal. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for the introduction and for the warm welcome and telling us about the DeLCON website, and also you took us through the NBRC website. Thank you so much for the welcome. While let's move on with the first talk of the day, and that is, as I mentioned, the opening remarks by Dr. William Curtis, Executive Vice President, Medicine and Life Sciences at Springer Nature. Before we start this, I would be reading his brief bio to introduce him to all of you. William Curtis, PhD, Executive Vice President for Medicine and Life Sciences Journals, is based in New York. Dr. Curtis has been in the STM publishing industry for more than 35 years. Dr. Curtis works with Springer Nature editors globally in North and South America, Europe, India, China, Korea, and Japan. He joined Springer Nature in 1996, following stints at Oxford University Press and John Wiley & Sons. In addition to his publishing responsibilities, Dr. Curtis is also president of Springer Science Business Media, one of the company's US-based corporate entities. Dr. Curtis has a PhD in biology from Washington University in St. Louis in 1979. Well, as I mentioned that Dr. Curtis is based in New York, and it is really very early for him at this time, he was kind enough to send his short video of the message that he wants to convey to all of you. So before waiting any further, I will be sharing that video here. He has a very sweet message for all the attendees. So here comes the video message of Dr. William Curtis. Just allow me a minute, just a second.
This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, my name is William Curtis. I'm Executive Vice President for Medicine and Life Sciences.
This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, my name is William Curtis. I'm Executive Vice President for Medicine and Life Science Publishing at Springer Nature, responsible for 975 academic and research journals and a team of 150 publishers around the world. You're going to meet some of them today. It's a great pleasure speaking with you. I only wish that I could be with you in person. Before COVID-19 disrupted our world, I had the good fortune to visit India many times while we were establishing the local journals publishing program. Every visit was rewarding, full of new experiences, and reaffirming that we are one world when it comes to sharing knowledge. Today, alas, I'm inviting you to my home. Welcome. I want to express my thanks to Dr. Lal, to Mr. Kumar for inviting my Springer Nature colleagues and me to speak with you today and in two subsequent webinars. Thanks also to my Springer Nature colleagues who are speaking today and to our excellent local team in New Delhi and elsewhere across India who helped organize what I know will be a productive and enjoyable experience for all of us. My colleagues will speak with you in detail about our journals portfolio in medicine and life sciences, as well as the tools that make publishing journals today both remarkably efficient and economical. By way of welcome, I'd like to take a minute or two to share a few thoughts about what we do. And by that I mean what we do as publishers, but also how each of you, as our trusted partners, can support and amplify our activities. The primary driver in academic and research publishing, whether it's STM, STEM, HSS, and any of the variants, is authors. All that we do as publishers is to make sure that authors are able to share their work, gain recognition for their work, and know that people reading their papers trust in the reliability of what they have published. So let's take a quick look at those three elements: sharing, recognition, and reliability. All of you know a lot about sharing. It's the essence of the library. Build and curate a collection in order to share knowledge. What could be more fundamental? Today in journal publishing, our review and production systems are designed to efficiently convert manuscripts into published articles quickly and reliably. But there's more. Our platforms and our business models are designed to promote sharing as well, whether through subscription licensing arrangements, our new transformative agreements, or fully open access publishing options. Whatever the business model, the goal is to make as much knowledge
Well, I'm really sorry. I think we're facing some technical issues, though I tried hard to really stop this, but still the video is echoing. And believe me, all attendees, it was working just fine in the morning. So that happens when we conduct such online events, and I'm really, again, my apologies. And I'm feeling sad also because he had a very beautiful message for all the attendees here. Actually, he wanted to convey that the primary driver in the academic and research publishing is authors. So he had a very beautiful message for the authors that how sharing, recognition, and reliability means more than ever now. And that's why we are also delighted to put up an event together which can help our existing and prospect authors. So though we could not really play the video as we wanted to, but I would still like to express my gratitude to Dr. Curtis as he made time to really record this video and send it to us. And he wanted to set the right perspective and tone of today's session. So all I can say is let's just move on to the next speaker. But still a big thank you to Dr. Curtis for doing this for us. Well, the second, or I should say the main talk is Trends in Publishing and Springer Nature Medicine and Life Sciences Journal Program highlights. As I mentioned in the beginning, Peter Butler, Editorial Director, Pooja Aggarwal, Editorial Director, and Dr. Jacco Flipsen, Vice President of Medicine and Life Sciences Journals, Springer Nature, they will be taking this session. Well, first, before really handing over this virtual stage to them, I would be introducing them to all of you. About Mr. Peter Butler, following a degree in modern languages, Peter joined Clover Academic Publisher in 1995. Since 2000, he has been managing the global book and journal programs, clinical medicine and life sciences at Springer Nature. Peter is currently responsible for the development of new brand of medicine journals within Springer Nature. And about Mamta, I'm really sorry, about Pooja Aggarwal. Pooja is an experienced publishing professional with over 15 years experience within the areas of journal management, strategic planning, business and product development, online innovation, open access, and society partner liaison. Her career spans trade, academic, and STM publishing. Following the successful merger of Springer and Nature, she now has a portfolio of 109 high-impact clinical medicine and biomedicine titles. She has a BA in Economics and Politics from SOAS, University of London, and an MPhil from Queen's College, Cambridge. And the third speaker in this session is Dr. Jacco Flipsen. Jacco was trained as a biologist and got his PhD in chemistry at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. He has over 20 years of experience in academic publishing with a strong focus on portfolio management of books and journals in the life sciences and society partnerships. He currently holds the position of Vice President, Medicine and Life Sciences Journals at Springer Nature, leading a global team of publishing professionals. Since mid-2019, Jacco is also on the board of Dutch Publishers Association. Well, thank you, Peter, Pooja, and Jacco for accepting this invitation, and thank you for all of the efforts that you have put in for this webinar today. The virtual stage is all yours. I'll be helping you with running the slides in the backend. And before you start your session, a note to all the attendees, as I mentioned in the beginning, please keep posting your questions in the chat box so that we have a seamless Q&A round. Thank you so much. Over to you, Jacco, Peter, and Pooja.
Thank you, Alpana, for the kind introduction to one of the main parts of the presentation and the webinar today. In the first part of this webinar, I, together with my colleagues Pooja and Peter, will show you highlights of the Springer Nature's Biomedicine and Life Sciences journal portfolio as we have it today. And obviously, as Dr. Curtis already mentioned, we can't give you details of all the journals that we have, but we'll show you some of the gems that we currently publish. If you have any questions about our specific titles, feel free to contact us via email after the session, and we'll get in touch with the appropriate publisher within our company. Next slide, please. Before we start looking at the highlights of the existing portfolio, I first wanted to showcase some of the launches that we're planning this year as well as next year. As you can imagine, Springer Nature is continuously reviewing their journal portfolio, and there's always a need to add journals to the portfolio to make sure that we don't have any gaps in our portfolio. As a company, we want to make sure that all authors find a home for every scientifically sound manuscript that gets submitted to Springer Nature. And we can only do that if we develop the portfolio together with the research development side. So we want to make sure that we find a home for every manuscript. We have to do that at different levels, because everybody realizes that not every paper is a Nature paper. And we have to make sure that our portfolio mirrors the levels of research that are out there. Here are the 3 journals that are listed in the Nature portfolio. They're launched this year: Nature Cancer, Nature Food, and Nature Earth and Environment. For next year, another 3 journals are being planned to launch: Nature Aging, Computational Sciences, and Methods Primers in the Nature Review series. Next page. In general, we're quite cautious in launching new journals, because we do know it's a lot of hard work, and it's difficult to get them off the ground in a viable way. Still, we're also working very much with academic communities as well as research institutions that are very eager and willing to launch new journals in fields that they see emerging. On this page, you see some examples of Springer and Biomed Central journals that are about to be launched or have launched this year already. And I'm not going to go into details in each of them, but it gives you a kind of a flavor of the kind of journals that we're publishing as of this year in our portfolio. In total, about 17 journals across medicine and life sciences are being added to the portfolio this year. And it tends to be a mix of hybrid subscription journals as well as full open access journals alike, really depending on what we think is most suitable for the field that the journal is publishing in. Can I have the next slide, please? Also, we're looking ahead for 2021. Obviously, it takes a lot of time to get the journals off the ground and get them ready for publication. So we really have to look ahead 1 or 2 years before the actual launch of journals. For next year, we currently have 9 journals on the planning to launch under the Biomed Central and Springer branding. 3 are listed here. The first one, Phenomics, is published in partnership with a prestigious institution in Shanghai, China. Obviously, China, an area of great growth potential in terms of article output that we very much want to publish with. The 2 other examples, Biomedical Engineering Education, ISMA Communications, are published together with academic societies, published in the US or globally, I should perhaps even say. And we already have a long-standing partnership with each of these academic societies, but also together with them, we're trying to make sure that their society publishes or provides platforms to publish the right content in their journals. And sometimes that means that we have to launch an additional journal like these 2 examples listed here. Next slide, please. So in the next part, and I'll kick off with 2 disciplines here. In the next part, Pooja, Peter, and I will cover each of the disciplines that we have within the biomedical and life sciences portfolio at Springer Nature. Just highlighting a few of the titles that we have. Obviously, this is only tip of the iceberg, but hopefully also it guides you to some gems in our portfolio that may be of interest to you submitting to in the future. Environmental sciences and pollution research is, if you take out scientific reports and material science, it's one of the biggest journals within Springer Nature. It gets about 12,000 submissions per year. It publishes over 3,000 articles per year. It's really, really big, but it's still relatively young. It hasn't been around that long, but it has grown very rapidly over time. And it's kind of a mirror of what has been happening in academic research and environmental sciences, gaining popularity, gaining more research funding as well over the past decades or so. It's also a great journal in terms of usage. It generates about close to 7 million downloads for this journal alone in the last year. It's publishing a lot of applied science, and it's also tying in with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And I'll actually touch on that at the very end of the presentation as well. The other journal that I wanted to highlight here, just showing one of the examples of an established journals within the program, Ecologia, which is an ecology journal that has been around for a long time, has a good impact factor, creates good usage, and it's actually part of a larger program in ecology that we carry at Springer Nature, with a lot of, particularly a lot of hybrid journals in the field. But also in this area, we are not afraid to launch new journals sometimes as an open access journal as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. Plant and animal sciences, agriculture. This is an area, a discipline that Springer Nature has been publishing in for a long time already. We have a very established program and quite a lot of prestigious and high impact and high volume journals. Two examples are highlighted here on the left side: Plant and Soil, Planta, each with an impact factor that is well above 3, which in the area of plant sciences is pretty good. It is actually growing. Both programs are growing quite rapidly. Both journals are hybrid journals at the moment, but with the possibility of publishing open choice in these journals, the number of open access journals, articles in these journals is increasing year on year. Next slide, please. And I think, Pooja, it's over to you.
Thank you, Jacco, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to speak to you all about some of the highlights of our program and sharing some of the gems with you, as Jacco said. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about microbiology, virology, and parasitology. There is about 40+ journals within this area in medicine and life sciences, and that doesn't include some of the Nature branded titles, which I'm showing on the right-hand side of the screen here. Obviously, we have Nature Microbiology, Nature Reviews Microbiology, and others that are leading the way in this field. The portfolio generally covers a wide scope from the study of microorganisms across microbiology, virology, as well as fungi. Fundamental and applied areas are represented, including infectious diseases. Our market position is very strong in this area. In 2019, 16% of all articles in microbiology were published from Springer Nature's portfolio. So we have a very strong position here. And titles range from very niche areas to very broad scope areas. So again, as Jacco said, and you'll see this as a recurring theme throughout our presentation, is one of our aims is to provide a home for every author and for every article. Therefore, we do have very small niched journals, but we also have very broad scope journals as well. A couple of journals that we've just highlighted here: Microbial Ecology, an impact factor just over 3.3. The editor-in-chief is based at the prestigious Craig Venter Institute. Also, European Journal of Clinical Microbiology and Infectious Diseases. We have many other journals which are affiliated with other societies and have been around for a very long time, very mature journals. but also very forward-looking journals, keeping up with the trends and the latest research that is out there. And of course, I've mentioned the Nature stable of journals as well. So this area as a whole is a very strong area for Springer Nature, where we are very proud to have a very wide variety of journals to suit all different tiers of research and authorship. Next slide, please. So now I want to move on to genetics. Again, this is a very, very strong area for Springer Nature as a whole. Nature genetics leads the way in this for us. But again, this is another subject area where we have many tiers of different journals fulfilling different purposes for this community. In the Medicine and Life Science group, the portfolio is around 26 journals, and just under half of those are open access. The rest are subscription and hybrid based. And again, our market position is very strong in genetics and heredity. In 2019, 34% of all articles published in this category were Springer Nature articles. And again, this portfolio also covers a wide variety of aspects across genetics, from the study of genes as a functional unit, including structure, function, the properties of inheritance, all the way through to mapping population genetics, disease inheritance, etc. And we also go through all organisms, from viruses to worms to humans. Again, we have some very broad scope journals, including, for example, Molecular Genetics and Genomics, which is highlighted here. This was first founded in 1908. And so you can just see from that the history, the deep history and reputation that these journals have gathered over a number of years, and that they're still going strong today. There is still a place for these journals in the field and in the community, and people still want to publish in them, which is a huge kudos to the journals, the editor, and the reputation that they've gathered over the years. Human genetics here. Again, you know, not all journals have massive impact factors, but that doesn't mean that they're not impactful, because impactful can mean different things to different communities and different regions. Jacco talks about a journal with over 12,000 submissions and a huge number of downloads. Now, in Human Genetics has over 400,000 downloads last year, not quite on the scale that Jacco talked about, but within this area, still very, very important and very sizable. So, you know, when we talk about and think about journals, we, think about impact, we think about citations, but we all think about usage and readership. What's of interest to people? What do people in this community want to see and want to read? So we really take all of these things into consideration. And that's why Jacco said at the beginning that we think very carefully about launching new journals and the place that those journals will have within those communities. We also publish with notable societies within the area of genetics. We publish with the European Society of Human Genetics and the Japan Society of Human Genetics as well. So looking globally, looking regionally, looking across the whole scope. So again, having something for everybody. Thank you. Next slide, please. And again, neurosciences, again, a very strong area for Springer Nature, Nature Neuroscience leading the way, but we also have many other slightly smaller niche journals within this area. Our portfolio focuses a lot on basic research, including the brain, neurophysiology, and the nervous system, but also including specific diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. We have just over 25 journals within the Medicine and Life Science group, and about a third of those are open access. Our position is strong in neurosciences. Again, last year, 16% of articles published came from Springer Nature journals, and we have a very strong presence in actually all of these three areas I've discussed so far in that top quartile of impact factors based on the JCR ranking. Two gems here just to highlight to you: Acta Neuropathologica, impact factor of just over 14 and over 900,000 article downloads last year. And Neurotherapeutics, again, impact factor of just over 6, and this is affiliated with the American Society of Experimental Neurotherapeutics. So very strong relationships here and very strong, impactful journals. Thank you. Next slide, please. Oncology and cancer research is one of the biggest growing areas of research globally, and I'm sure we all realize why. There are so many different types of cancer, and what we try to do in this portfolio is really cover all aspects from basic to translational to clinical cancer research and oncology research. This is a very strong area for us. We have over 48 journals within the Medicine and Life Science group, and that's excluding journals like Nature Cancer, Nature Reviews Cancer, BMC Cancer. We also publish cancer research, of course, in Nature Communications and in Scientific Reports. So again, this is probably one of our strongest areas in terms of the number of journals we have and the range of the portfolio. So again, very highly selective journals like Nature Cancer, all the way through to more community-based journals like BMC Cancer, to very specific journals looking at specific areas like leukemia and oncogene. These journals, again, are mature. They've been around a long time, but what makes them so important is that they are staying relevant. They are looking at the trends in what's happening in this area, bringing on new editors, looking at the scopes, publishing special issues, really thinking about what is of interest. And again, our aim is absolutely to have somewhere for everybody to publish their work. Our publication output in oncology has an annual growth rate of about 5%. We have the #1 position in terms of article publication in this space. Just under 22% of our articles last year were Springer Nature articles. And this is driven by high volume journals like BMC Cancer, but also a lot of growth from China, Jacco mentioned before. These are big, impactful journals with very key opinion leaders as editors-in-chief leading these journals. I've just mentioned a few here. Oncogene, with a focus on research on cellular and molecular biology of cancer, 50 issues a year. Impact factor of 7.9. This has over 3 million article downloads. Annals of Surgical Oncology, obviously with a focus on surgical treatments and latest advances for surgeons. Impact factor of over 3.6, but over 1 million article downloads in 2019. Leukemia covers all aspects of research and treatment of leukemia and allied diseases. Impact factor of 8.66. A real mix in that journal of basic translation and clinical work. And again, a reviews journal, Cancer and Metastasis Reviews, impact factor of 6.4, and really focusing very much on breast cancer, metastasis and tumor progression there. We also have some very high impact open access journals. And so in the portfolio as a whole, we really balance out between hybrid and open access, basic translational and research. And this is definitely an area that I personally am very excited about in terms of our growth and how we continue to make our journals relevant and serve those communities that we're in. And next slide, please. And then the last one from me is just to touch on pharmacology, pharmacy, and toxicology. This is a growing area, I think, for us. We have about 17 journals in this area, which are all hybrid at the moment. And Jacco mentioned a little earlier, we've brought on 2 new journals this year within this subject area. We are growing the number of articles that we're published around 5% each year. And we're growing our market share in this area. There is definitely room for growth, and so we're focusing a lot on how do we take that next step. And of course, we have Nature Reviews drug discovery really leading the way in this area. But again, just to mention a couple of these journals, Pharmaceutical Research, over 700,000 downloads last year, the official journal of the American Association of Pharmaceutical Scientists. And then Archives of Toxicology, impact factor of just over 5, over 600,000 downloads last year, and over 1,000 submissions to that journal every year. And the 2 new journals that we've taken on board are already in 2020 publishing, 200-300 papers already so far. So we have really high hopes of cementing those journals going forward. And again, associating ourselves with key societies globally, like the Disease Information Association, the Drug Information Association in America, and also the Controlled Release Society, on behalf of, we published their journal, Drug Discovery and Translational Research. So a portfolio of a mix of advancing medical product discovery, development, regulation, alongside state-of-the-art papers that present innovation and research across the various pharmaceutical sciences. So again, a very broad portfolio, and again, you'll see this theme of and this consistency across medicine and life science of trying to have journals that are relevant to all authors at all levels, and that's certainly something that we take very seriously and that we will look to continue to develop as we go forward. And I think I will now pass over to Peter. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, thank you very much for giving us opportunity to show some of our program and to you all. Carrying on in the theme, we now move on to the field of biotechnology and biomedical engineering. This is very much an interdisciplinary program, a portfolio of journals that we have, and there will be some overlap here, complementing the microbiology program that Pooja just described a few seconds ago. Again, we have a wide variety of journals in this area covering very niche topics, and then moving to more broader subject areas, from high impact factors to lower impact factors, so that we can cater to all new scientists, researchers wanting to get published, and providing a home for nearly every sound piece of research. Again, just to carry on the theme, we don't want to go where we don't have time to go through all the journals. So here are a few highlights. We have Applied Microbiology and Biotechnology. Again, a very established journal, been with Springer for very many years. A nice impact factor of 3.5, which is ranked in the second quartile of the Clarivate Analytics journal category program. Mentioning again 1.9 million article downloads. I just did a little bit of mathematics, and I think that works out at about over 3 downloads every minute, which, when you start to think about it, while we're chatting away now, people are downloading papers, and then if you go back to Jacco's Environmental Sciences and Pollution Research, then the frequency is even higher, and for Oncogene even higher still. The next journal, Annals of Biomedical Engineering. This is a society journal published on behalf of and together with the Biomedical Engineering Society in the USA. We publish 4 hybrid subscription titles with the BMES, and that's a very a nice collaboration that we have going. Again, a nice impact factor, 3.3. On the other side of it, obviously on the Nature portfolio, there are some big hitters here. Nature Biotechnology, monthly publication, receives I don't know how many submissions, but with an impact factor of 36.5. It's right up there. Nature Biomed Engineering was only published or started publishing a few years ago, I think, but has already established itself with an impact factor of 18.9. And the relationships that we have, we've been talking to the Annals of Biomedical Engineering with the Biomedical Engineering Society, so that the relationships are harmonious, and that we can see that sometimes papers that are maybe declined or rejected by Nature Biomedical Engineering, they may find their way down to the Annals of Biomedical Engineering. So we provide authors with a nice alternative to get their paper published, and Jacco will touch on this again a little bit later in the presentation. Moving on to the next slide, please. Cell biology and biochemistry. Obviously, cell biology is a huge field and touches nearly on everything that has a cell. I think that within our own sort of categorization, we have around 80 journals in this field. Again, ranging from very niche titles to slightly broad, well, to much broader titles, you know, catering to all areas of the field. Again, here there will be overlap with the other areas in the fields of molecular biology and genetics, where there'll be overlap. Again, at the end of the day, I think all researchers in these fields, they're trying to, you know, solve fundamental problems existing in out there in research. Again, a few highlights for you. Cell research, an impact factor of 20. In quartile 1 of Clarivate's categorization, ranked 7th out of 195 journals. Impressive number of downloads again, and this is published in collaboration and on behalf of the Shanghai Institutes for Biological Sciences and the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Underneath that, we have Cellular and Molecular Life Sciences, which has been a Springer journal for many years. Impact factor of 6.5. Again, also in quartile 1, over 1 million downloads, and an impressive number of citations in 2019, covering a broad area of all kinds of subject areas in the cellular and molecular life sciences. On the right-hand side, we'll see obviously Nature Cell Biology, impact factor of 20, monthly publication. Nature Chemical Biology, impact factor over 12. And again, like I said, for Nature Biotech and for Nature Biomedical Engineering, the hope is that papers which are declined or rejected, that they will maybe filter down through the system and find a suitable home at a slightly lower impact factor level. And that's where we try and help authors as much as possible in that area. Moving on to the next slide. We have a portfolio of journals which we call the current reports. They are a collection of online review journals. There are about 75 of them, I think. Initially, they were started focusing on the clinical medicine area, but now there's an increasing number in the biomedicine and life sciences, which we are slowly growing. The current reports, they publish mini reviews on micro topics that try to critically synthesize and organize recent developments in specific subject areas. As we all know, there is an increasing and rapidly growing overload of information being published, and the current reports through these insightful mini review type articles designed to help authors keep abreast of recent developments. Each of these journals has a thematic structure, which are headed up by editors-in-chief selected from top institutions. And these editors-in-chief, they use their extensive networks to invite experts from all parts of the world to contribute in these selected micro-topic areas. One of the interesting parts of these current reports journals is that the reference lists are annotated, so much so that they highlight published articles, particular articles which are considered to be of major importance to that particular field, which again helps the researcher and the reader to get a very quick and good overview of what's happening in their fields of importance. Here we've just highlighted a couple more in the life sciences. So current climate change. Climate change is obviously a very hot topic. I think we saw climate change on an earlier slide. Impact factor of over 6, ranked 7th out of 93. Current forestry reports, which is again a fairly young journal, impact factor of nearly 5, and it's ranked number 1 in the Clarivate Analytics category on forestry. So that, again, for us, this is a very important and I think a very useful resource within our larger portfolio. The next slide, please. So now we move on to a more recent development within Springer Nature. You'll see here a sort of SN logo. We're again trying to cater for researchers from all stages from early career to late career, and these this is a collection of I think nearly 10 journals now, covering broad scope across the whole academic spectrum, you know, from applied sciences, from clinical medicine to the social sciences. Again, so that we can try to provide a home for authors who have maybe been rejected or declined by other journals. And these journals are a broad scope, they're sound science, so as long as the methodology is sound, that the data presented is sound, and the data can be validated, then you've got a good, strong chance of being published. There is less focus on being impact rich and novelty. We're looking at sound science and giving authors a place to get published. So the two examples here listed are Current Microbiology. Again, this is a fully indexed journal. It's been around for very many years, so it has a reputation and developed a presence within the microbiology community. And as you heard earlier from Pooja, again, we have a very strong microbiology program, and papers that are getting rejected, they can filter down. And in Current Microbiology, again, as long as the papers are fundamentally sound, then they've got a very strong chance of getting published. And it's providing, you know, we're trying to provide a service to authors, providing them with an alternative to get published, to have a fair chance. And also, we hope that it will reduce the burden of peer review for the peer review community, who are obviously are being constantly invited to review very, very, very many papers. The second one, Molecular Biology Reports, again, a very established journal, fully indexed, molecular biology covering all areas of molecular and cellular biology, and as with Current Microbiology, focusing on fundamental soundness of research rather than the novelty and impact. On the open access side, maybe on the Nature side, you all may well have heard of Nature Communications, Communications Biology, Scientific Reports, and the Biomed Central, the BMC series of journals in various areas like BMC Biology, BMC Microbiology, etc., etc. So we're trying to cater for hybrid subscription customers, authors, as well as for the open access people who have funding to publish in the open access mode. And I think I pass now back on to Jacco. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Pooja, both for outlining, I guess, the diversity of the program as we have it within Springer, diversity in terms of disciplines that we cover within the Biomedical Life Sciences journals, the broadness of the journal, so whether it's a broad discipline or a niche discipline, we have a platform where you can publish your research in. Also diversity in terms of business models, being a hybrid subscription journal or open access. We get to talk about that in a little bit of time. So there's a lot that we publish, which I hope is meeting your needs in terms of where you want to publish your next research in as an academic. I think I have another 15 minutes left to talk about publishing trends. And obviously that's not going to be enough to cover all of it. So I've decided to pick a few interesting developments that are happening within Springer Nature or within the academic publishing community at large on what is happening. First, I'm going to briefly talk about open access, open research. Then I'm going to talk about our investment as a publisher into putting our authors and peer reviewers first in all what we do. And I close our part of the presentation by telling a little bit about how what we do relates to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Next slide, thanks. So let's first talk a little bit about open access. Next slide. Springer Nature obviously is well positioned in the world of open access. We've always been in the forefront of open access publishing. See, for example, the acquisition of Biomed Central already quite some time ago. The introduction of publishing open access articles in a subscription journal, which was quite revolutionary at the time, but now being picked up by all of the major publishers. And as we move forward, moving into an open access world of publishing in a sustainable way. Springer Nature is one of the largest open access publishers, and I realize the numbers that are listed here are a little bit outdated, giving 2018 numbers, but it kind of gives you a flavor on how big open access is at Springer Nature, where we publish open access primarily under the Biomed Central and Springer brand, but also at the Nature brand and in the Humanities Social Sciences using Palgrave Macmillan. Next slide, please. So one of the things that is very important to us at this point in time is the whole discussion about moving away from subscription deals into transformative deals. So this is not very much about the kind of content that we publish, but it's really about how we publish the content and how we make it accessible for our readers. Transformative deals, again, this is something where Springer Nature has been very much in the forefront of in discussions. Transformative deals, hybrid journals can really make a difference into the movement to open access. We have deals, transformative deals in various places already, especially in Europe, in the Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, UK, for example, but recently we also signed a transformative deal with the University of California Library, and also in India we have our first transformative or read and publish deals that we signed recently in your country. And for us, this is really, well, first of all, it's showing our commitment to open access. It's really making the transition to open access possible in such a way that it is sustainable for us as a publisher, for the library as a content holder, and make sure that the academic community goes along in that flow, in that transition together. Okay, next slide. So open access is one thing, but we actually want to more talk about open research as a whole, which includes many more aspects of the publishing process, and not only publish your article open access, but there's also getting more and more emphasis on the publication of the underlying data and make those freely available or openly available for the academic community. So we're very much involved in publishing research data. Every journal at Springer Nature has a research data policy, which can vary from a very liberal policy to a much more stringent policy, especially in the medical and biomedical sciences. We tend to be a bit more stringent in our policy to make sure that the underlying data are being presented to our readers. and that they are available in public resources. We also provide help as a company to get the data in the correct way, in a curated way. So we have research data support to help with that. Next slide. Open access is making content freely available for the reader, but at the same time, we still publish a lot of hybrid articles or subscription-based articles, and the actions that an author can do to make his or her research readable is a little bit more limited. But also there are movements in that area. For example, and giving the authors more possibilities to make their research more findable and accessible. Pre-printing is one of the items which is very much in the forefront of the developments here. And we at Springer Nature do encourage our authors to post a preprint on a server to make sure that the research is accessible early on. Also, in terms of self-archiving, we do have a fairly liberal policy. Authors are able to host an author-accepted manuscript version of their paper on their own website or later on the institutional repository of the university where you're working at. Next slide. And related to that, Springer Nature has launched In Review a little while back, and we're currently rolling that out to more and more of our journals in batches. In Review is pretty much a preprint server for our journals. So at the moment that you submit your manuscript to a Springer Nature journal for which In Review is available, there will be first a how do we call it, an ethical check on your manuscript in terms of duplication, and make sure that that the research integrity of your paper has been checked. But as soon as that has been done, your paper will be posted as a preprint on our server, while at the same time it's undergoing the editorial process of peer review. So while your article is under review, people can already see the submitted version freely available online, and that helps to get content out earlier on in the process. It also helps the discussion between the academics on the research paper, and get valuable feedback before the article, before the final decision of the article is taken, which can be accepted or rejected, I guess, in the end. Next page. So one of the strong investments that we are doing currently as an academic publisher, and this pretty much applies to all of the main academic publishers, I should add, is to really focus on what matters very much to us, and put our authors, our editors, our editorial boards, and peer reviewers in very much in the focus point of all the things that we do. So over time, we are or have been developing all kinds of tools and services that are valuable for these key groups, for these key communities, for our publications. Next slide, please. And as an example of that, we're currently rolling out Credit, which is a system which has been around already for a couple of years. But it allows, in a structured way, to define the roles of each of the contributors of a paper, and therewith it improves the accountability. Who has done what? Who has written the article? Who has done certain experiments? Who has done the review of the paper? Who's responsible for what? And at the same time, it also reduces the potential for author disputes once the article is published. So this is an example, or where we want to make sure that we add credibility to the papers that we publish, which I think is in the author's interest as well as in the reader's interest. Next slide. Manuscript transfers, I'm not going to go through the slide as a whole, but and Peter Butler already touched on this a little while ago. We do recognize that not every paper is a Nature paper, is something I said at the very beginning. But if it's not, what then? What can we do to help the author to find that suitable home? And this is where the transfer desk comes into place. This is basically a physical desk of colleagues at Springer Nature who help authors to find a suitable home for their rejected manuscript. So if it's not accepted for Journal A, the manuscript will go to the transfer desk, and together with the transfer desk, we will be looking, and the author, we will be looking for a good home in Journal B for that particular manuscript. It's been rolled out a few years ago. The numbers of manuscripts that are being brought to the transfer desk is increasing rapidly year on year, and it's generally a service which is very helpful for the authors to make sure that their research is published as soon as possible and as smoothly as possible. Next slide. So, and then there are many initiatives in place in the academic publishing industry that facilitate peer review, because we all very much realize that peer review is a very important aspect of the publishing process of academic research, but it's also the part of the process which is very time consuming. And obviously there's a reason for it, because a good evaluation just costs time. And one of the things that review or editorial boards are most struggling with is actually to find the right reviewer who can review a particular manuscript best, because quite a lot of cases the content is highly specific, and there's only a few experts in the world that are able to really fully grasp the essence of an article. To that end, we have in place a reviewer finder for all of our journals, and that helps the editorial board members to find the best reviewers out there to review a particular manuscript. Other developments, maybe in a longer distance, further future, is the use of blockchain technology to in the peer review process, to safeguard the author's content and the process in a cloud way of working. I've already talked about the transfer desk a little bit, which is a good service to the authors to find a suitable home for manuscripts. And then when all the reviewers do their work, in the past they hardly got any credit for their reviews, because it's often done anonymously, so you don't get the immediate reward of the hard work that you've been doing to review those papers. But there are some initiatives out there that Springer Nature is very much working together with to give those reviewers more credit for their works. And some of the initiatives notable are Publons and ORCID that allow reviewers to build their own resume, so to say, of articles that they have been reviewing for the Springer Nature journals. Another aspect that is considered to be important is to authenticate authors, especially in the time of when we have to deal with a lot of ethical issues and research integrity issues for submissions that we're getting. The first step is to make sure that we know that we're dealing with the author who is listed as the author on the paper. And the ability of authors to register themselves with ORCID before they submit any research paper helps us to make sure that the authors that submit to our journals are real authors. More and more journals are making the ORCID, how do you say that, the sign up registration mandatory. So you have to sign up with ORCID before you can submit to some of the Springer Nature journals, and that pool of journals is growing year by year. Next slide, please. So in the first part of the presentation, we highlighted some of the key titles within our portfolio, and in some cases we also highlighted the impact factor of the journal. Generally, the impact factor is seen as one of the more important quality measures on a journal level. But over time, Springer Nature, as well as many of the other publishers, also realize that the impact factor cannot be the only value that determines the quality of a journal, or that determines the quality of an individual contribution within that journal. So these days, our journals list more metrics on the website, journal metrics, but also on the article level. We are supplying our authors with individual metrics on how their contribution has contributed to success. I should also point out here that Springer Nature is a signatory of DORA, which is the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, which basically makes that or shows that we have committed to not only look at the impact factor as a measure, but also make sure that at the same time we take into account other metrics that are available, such as examples that are listed on this slide. Let's move to the final part. Next slide, please. So this is this is basically the last point that I wanted to highlight as an important development within Springer Nature, where I want to show that we focus with our publications also in relation to the United Nations Grand Challenges and Sustainable Development Goals it has set. It is really aimed to highlight the relevance of the publications that we have, that we publish in relation to today's long-term challenges that we face as a world, I guess, the world that we live in. It's an important project. It connects the publications that we have with the UN goals, and it's actually led by Sir Philip Campbell, the former editor-in-chief of Nature. So that kind of shows the significance of this program for us as a company. And in view of time, I think I'm going to finalize this part of the session here, and we can go to the Q&A session, Alpana.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jacco, Pooja, and Peter, for presenting this journals program and the diversity of journals we have. And thank you, Jacco, for presenting trends also as well. So yes, it is 3:55. You already have the set of questions with you. May I request to take up those, and then we can finish this session.
Okay, I'm looking at the questions now. The first question is without a name. In biomedical research, data is a matter of concern. Is there any website or link to obtain biomedical data? And I don't think there is a single website to get all the data that you would need. There are obviously various repositories, either within Springer Nature, sometimes published as supplementary material with the individual article. But there are also a lot of repositories which are very discipline specific, where you can find a lot of data. I'm thinking of Figshare or Dryad, and maybe Pooja, Peter, you can jump in here, and maybe there are other repositories, but this is the challenge of working with data. Data is in various places, and it comes in various forms and shapes, which makes it even more difficult to deal with that. The second question, if I may continue with that, is by Mr. Pramod. Please kindly suggest some journals on updated technology fields like nanotechnology, robotics, and artificial intelligence. Any of my colleagues who wants to jump in here?
Yeah, so I can comment on that. So we do have a number of journals. Obviously, Nature Nanotechnology actually leads the field for us in this area. And it's a monthly peer-reviewed journal. It was established in 2006, so it's been around for a long time. It actually has an impact factor of over 31, so very, very well established. And actually, in general, we do have quite a number of journals within the sort of material science area, and we are looking at further going into sort of the AI area. A lot of our journals currently already publish certain sections on AI and robotics, but we are actually also looking at some new launches within this area as well, under the Nature Partner Journal branding. So there's definitely a number of journals there that we can direct you to. Maybe what we can do after this call is just put it in an email, and we can send it through to Alpana and give you some suggestions on some of the journals that cover those fields. But yes, we definitely do have some, and we can share some information on that after this webinar. So yeah.
Thank you, Pooja. The third question is from Ms. Chitra Devi. What is the difference between book publications, chapter publications, and journal article publications? Do you want to answer that, Pooja, or do you want me to jump into this?
Well, in terms of journal article publications, I mean, obviously the main difference between a journal and a book is a journal is more regular, it's the frequency. Most journals publish monthly, and online-only journals publish articles as soon as they are ready. And we try to, from the point a paper is accepted to when it gets published, we try to publish those papers under 20 days. So it's the speed of publication that's different. It's the format. It's the way that the paper is presented. A book is very different to that. A book takes much longer to put together. There's individual chapters written often by different people and collated together. So the timeline is very different, and the process is very different. And I think in a nutshell, that's really the main difference between book publication and journal publication. So it really depends on how in depth you want to be, what type of work it is, and the way that you want that to be presented. So there's a number of things to think about in terms of whether what you're writing is better within a book, or whether actually it should be published in the journal. Jacco and Peter, I don't know if you want to add anything more.
Yeah, maybe I can add. Oh, Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, Jacco, I was just going to say, I think that journals lend themselves more to original research publications. I don't think many authors will go to a book format to publish their original research data and findings. A book tends to be a sort of collection of sort of which summarizes bringing existing knowledge into one place, providing that kind of volume for the library community. Jacco?
Yeah, well, I was pretty much going to say the same thing. The book publication is more of the secondary publication, but it also gives a little bit more freedom usually. Huh? If you publish in a journal, you're very much bound by author's instructions and being very concise in what you publish. Whereas as in a book chapter, because it is secondary and because it's giving probably a broader overview of a field, you're also getting more space to write, and the length of a book chapter tends to be a bit longer than the length of a journal article. And then I have two remaining questions, and now I lost my screen here, so I have to reopen that, from Ms. Ruchi Sharma and Ms. Shivami. And they're both asking for their respective fields, what would be a suitable journal? And while I don't think I can give you a straightforward answer here, one of the things that I can point out is that within Springer Nature, we also have what we call a journal selector. And that's a little tool where you just plug in the title and an abstract of your paper, by use of algorithms and artificial intelligence, I guess, the tool helps you to find what are the suitable journals within the Springer Nature portfolio. So that's by using that journal selector, you may be at least getting an idea of what suitable journals might be there for you. It not only gives the title of the journal, but it also gives the website, so you can see more of the scope of the journal, whether it really matches what you're trying to say in your article. Gives information about the impact factor of the journal, if that exists. So it can kind of gives you an idea of what are the options within the Springer Nature portfolio in the areas that you work with. We'll find a way to get the link to the journal selector to you after the session summit. And I think that closes the list of questions as I have them. Alpana, have we received any more?
Hello. Yeah, Jacco, I think that is all the questions that we have. And I think this is the end of your session. Thank you so much, Jacco, Peter, and Pooja, once again for a wonderful session, giving such insights on journals and trends and taking the questions as well. Thank you so much, Jacco.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Let's move on with the next session that we have planned for the event. And that is by Dr. Mamta Kapila, as I mentioned in the beginning. She will be talking about nuances and tools of scientific publishing. Before I invite her to talk about it, I would like to introduce her to all of you. Mamta Kapila is part of Global Journal Publishing team at Springer Nature. She is an executive editor responsible for the Medicine and Life Sciences journals team from Springer, India. She has been in Springer for more than a decade now. Academically, she's a doctorate in neuroendocrinology from Delhi University and Calcutta University. She has worked with scientific and academic societies, mainly from India and Southeast Asia. Well, thank you so much, Mamta, for sparing time for this webinar today. And I would like you to unmute yourself, and I'll be making the presenter so that you can show your screen.
Thank you, Alpana. Thank you so very much. So can you see my screen now?
Yes, you can start your presentation, then we can see your slides as well. You can see the screen.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank you, Alpana, for giving me this opportunity to present my thoughts here and share my experiences of how to publish and how can the author successfully publish with Springer. But then before I start off with my presentation, first of all, I would like to thank Will for giving an awesome kickoff to this webinar. Though we couldn't see his video completely, but then whatever we saw was motivating enough. And then I would also like to thank Jacco, Pooja, and Peter for giving such a wonderful overview of our MLS program. And to the audience, I would like to say a good afternoon to everyone who has been thoughtful enough to register for this webinar and spend their day hearing us out. I hope all of you and your family are doing good in these pandemic times. So now, when you have an overview of what we do and what we offer, I, in my presentation, would take you through the nuances and tools of scientific publishing. And that is precisely the topic of my presentation here today.
Hi, Mamta, you need to put up your slides. We can't see your presentation as yet.
You can't?
No.
Can you see it now?
Yes, now we can. Thank you.
Okay. So the very first question that any researcher has in mind is that why should he publish? Yeah. So that is the very first thing when he starts with his research, then he has in mind that he eventually would need to publish. So the very first question is, why should you publish? You should publish because then you need to exchange your ideas with your peers globally to let them know what you did, how you did, and what you found. You also need to network with your community because then that helps you connect with your peers and scientists and give you a platform to discuss your research. You also need to publish because you want to acquire funding for your project or support and execute your research plans ahead. You also need to publish because then you want to proceed with your advancement in your career to build up your publication record and to build up your credentials. And again, you want to be an effective communicator. So the aim is not just to be an author and publish your research, but then you want to be an effective communicator because you want to disseminate your research to the right target audience. So and then you understand that research is not complete until it is published. And without publication, science is considered dead. So now when we know what to publish, why do we want to publish? I would like to understand from my audience first, what do they know about publishing? So Alpana, would you be running the first poll?
Yeah, Mamta, I have. I think audience can see that.
Okay.
Yeah. You might want to talk about this a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So now when you know why do you want to publish, I would want to understand from you, from the audience, that what do you think is most important to publishing successfully? Is it only the logically structuring the manuscript or adopting the right publication strategy or submitting to the right journal or all of the above?
You can see Mamta on the screen, the results I have displayed.
How do I see that?
There's a window that should be behind your presentation, where I can tell you 85% of people says all of the above are important, and you may want to continue with the presentation.
Okay, okay, great. Yeah. So good that everybody knows that it is all of the above, the entire things, the points, the parameters that one needs to know. So as far as logically structuring the manuscript is concerned, it is equally important to adopting an efficient publication strategy, which is again equally important to as submitting successfully submitting a journal to the right journal. And then these are the three topics that are going to be covered in my presentation today. And towards the end of the presentation, I shall brief you about the services that Springer holds for its authors, and that can surely help you in your publication journey. So let's, before moving on to the very first topic of the day, I hope and I'm sure that everybody must be informed that out of the total manuscripts submitted to any journals, out of the total submissions that happen in a year, only very few manuscripts are accepted without any form of revision. So right at the first instance, there's just a minimum percentage of manuscripts that are accepted right at the first instance. And it's very common for the manuscripts to undergo the first, second, or even third round of revision by the reviewers. So rejection and revision are integral to the peer review process. So the author should always be prepared that the manuscript may undergo revision. He may be asked to revise his manuscript as per the reviewer comments, and he may be asked to address the reviewer comments. So then he should be all open to receiving the suggestions and then further working on those. And he always needs to put that in mind that peer review is a positive process. So the reviewer comments that he would receive eventually would be for the improvement of his manuscript. So then he needs to take that, in a positive spirit and then move ahead. So let's move on to the first part of the presentation today, which is logically structuring the manuscript. So while you structure your manuscript, the model, the sequence, the pedagogy of the manuscript that you should essentially look at is the IMBRAD model. And we call it an expanded IMRAD model because then your manuscript should have the following elements there. It should first of all begin with the title, then you should have an abstract, keywords, introduction, methods, results, discussion, references, and acknowledgement. So then the entire manuscript, I mean, wherever any author starts working on a manuscript, he should take his manuscript as a story, that he needs to work on a story which should actually have a beginning, the middle, and the end. So the beginning would certainly have the historic aspect of it, say, when we consider research. So what is it that has already been established in the scientific community? What already exists in the literature? Where is the gap, which again should form the basis of his research? And then he should tell what he did, how he did, and what were the findings. And then towards the end, he should conclude his findings and then try to relate that with the advancement in the field. So we are going to go to all of it in detail in the subsequent slides. So let's move ahead. So if you want to be an effective communicator, I mean, besides being an effective author, one should always look into account the reader's perspective. And one should know that the readers would have four main questions about your study. The readers would definitely look for, why did you do the study? What did you do? What did you find? And then, how does the study advance the field? And then all of these four questions should definitely be addressed into the introduction, methods, results, and the discussion section. So let's move on to the very first part of the body matter of the article, which is the first element is introduction, which certainly should address that why does your study need to be done? What was the objective behind choosing that particular topic as the topic of your research? So why did you do that? So, the way you should begin your introduction is you should definitely start off broad and then guide your readers down to your specific aims. You should begin with the basic background information your readers need to know to understand the context of your study. That is very important. And you need to keep in mind that the type of journal you're submitting to. So if you're submitting to an international journal, be sure that you emphasize the worldwide relevance of your topic. And if you're submitting to a broad focus journal, then you will need to provide more background information, because then people outside your immediate field would also clearly understand the context of your research. And if you're submitting to a regional journal, research that has been done regionally and may not apply elsewhere, so then you should be targeting to submitting to a regional journal, and then you need not give that much background and you can simply be on your topic. So once you've provided the context, then you need to tell your readers what is currently known about your topic. So you'll need to discuss what has recently been published about this topic. Make sure you cite studies that are up to date and broadly distributed worldwide. So a correct attribution to what you're writing, to the literature review that you mentioned, you need to be sure that you are correctly attributing the text and you're acknowledging the work of earlier researchers. So this is especially important if you're submitting to an international journal. So once you've told your researchers that what is known about this topic, now you can tell them what doesn't exist. Yeah. So then that should become the research problem that serves the basis of your study. This then would lead to your specific aim. Be sure that your aim directly addresses the research problem you identify. So it is in this way that your readers would clearly understand the objective of your study. And this would form the introduction of your, the first section of your manuscript. So then after introduction, you would have the method section, which should include what did you do and how did you do. So this again would have two parts in it. The section will be important to people not only in your field, but they would help them not only to reproduce what you have done, but then this would also help them to build on what you have done. So please keep it in mind that this is not only essential for researchers in your field, but it is also one of the first sections that would be carefully evaluated during the peer review process. And if your reviewers see that you did not do you did not use an appropriate or up-to-date methodology, it's very much probable that they would just outrightly reject your manuscript. So you need to be very careful when you're phrasing and you're drafting this particular section. So keep in mind the reader's perspective, keep in mind the reviewer's perspective, and then accordingly draft your method section. So then after, what did you do? So what is it that they need to know? So who and what was used in the study? In this section, you need to describe the model animal that you use, the techniques that you use and perform the experiments. And this would also include any control that were necessary and that you adopted to validate those techniques or experiments. So lastly, you also need to describe how you analyzed your data, the quantification method that you used. So if you used any model or equation, you should definitely define all the variables and assumptions and identify that the statistical test that you used determines significance. So if you logically organize all the relevant information about your study design, you'll successfully answer the second question, that what did they, what is it that they need to know? Coming on to the results section. So this section would essentially guide your readers through your findings. And the best tip that you can adopt for while drafting your research is that if you've carried out different experiments, you can have subheadings under your results section. And then you can relate your text, the findings of your results, with the figures. So figures or tables. So when you're putting your data in the table, or you're trying to showcase that through a figure, be sure that the figure carries the right figure lesion, it has the right numbering, and it has the right sub-labels with it, so that the readers can find it easy to comprehend the results in the results section. So the figure should always be in coherence to what you are describing in the results section. And then the tips to write the results section would be, again, this would have a beginning, middle, and end to it. You can use the subheadings, as I just said. So, and you should always use past tense to describe your results. So this was observed, it was found, something like that, yeah. But then when you're referring to figures and tables, they should always be presented in the present tense. You should present the facts, and you need not discuss your results here, because then that would move on to the discussion section of your manuscript. You don't have to duplicate data among figures, tables, and text, because then duplication must always be avoided. If you describe something in the text, in the figure, or in the table, you need not duplicate that into the results section. Then include results of your statistical analysis in the text. So this should form the results section of the manuscript. The next and the very important section of your manuscript is the discussion section, wherein the readers would look for that how your study contributes to the field. What is it, that would help the scientific community or the researchers ahead can build up, or for their research. So this section essentially, would answer the last key question, that how your study contributes to the field. And I take this section as just as the opposite of the introduction. In introduction, what you do is you start off broad and then you narrow down to the aims. Over here, what you do is, that's a triangle. So you start off with your results, the findings of your research, and then you broaden that out with the informing of the implications that your study would bring to the field. So then it's just the reverse of the introduction section. So to do this, you need to interpret your findings. You'll have to describe how your findings are similar or different, as compared to what has already been published. You will have to discuss any unexpected or negative results. Mind you, this is really very important. You should never ever hide results from your readers. Just be sure to describe why you think you observe those findings and how future researchers can further address them if necessary. Lastly, be sure to describe any limitations in your study design. This is equally very important. Your ability to identify your limitations and what measures were taken to control them establishes your expertise in the field. So this is really very important. Just try to be as transparent as you can. And then at the end of your discussion, sometimes as a separate section, or maybe you can just merge the conclusion section into your discussion section. But please remember that this is the last section that will be read, meaning that it is likely to be what is remembered most by readers. So be sure to discuss what is most important about your study, including the main conclusion, key implications, and potential future directions. So that should all be in the discussion section, or you may just extract that out and build up a conclusion section. So after discussion or conclusion, you would have the reference section, which forms the back matter of your manuscript. And then by then, when you're working on your manuscript, the target journal has already been decided. So you can always refer to the author guidelines, the guidelines for authors that are mentioned, there on the right-hand side on the journal homepage, on the target journal that you're referring to or you're targeting at. Then you should always try adhering to the reference style that the journal holds. So try to format your references, check the guide for authors for the appropriate format. And formatting should just not be done in the reference list, the references that are there in the reference list, but you should also try and format your references in the text. So make sure that there are no uncited or unlinked references in the text. And then whatever matter, content you've reviewed or you've taken from earlier findings or earlier established literature, make sure that you cite all of them. If you're using any figure, then make sure that you apply for the rights and permissions, and you take permission to adopt that figure in your research paper. So you should carry the right permission rights from the author and the respective publisher. You can also use reference management softwares that exist. So if you have an access to any of those like RefWorks, Mendeley, EndNote, Zotero, or Papers, you can use them to format your references. Just in case if you don't have an access to any of those, then probably you'll have to format them manually. So depending on if you want to adopt, if the journal offers or recommends you to format your references in Vancouver style or Harvard style or Chicago style, you should always try to do that to the best possible. So the next part is logically linking your ideas. So once you're done with the drafting, the introduction, methods, methodology, you've described results and discussion. So the 4 questions that you projected for the readers right in the beginning of your manuscript, now when you're coming to the end of the manuscript, make sure that you address all the 4 questions. You need to ensure that all these 4 questions are correctly and aptly answered in your manuscript. So why this study needs to be done, what did you do, what did you found, and how your study contributes to the field. These elements should be covered in the respective elements of your manuscript. But in addition, a nice linear flow of information should always be there. I would strongly encourage you to link your ideas together throughout your manuscript. So it has to be a swift story. There should not be any abrupt, or say hiccups in the manuscript. It should be a smooth flow of information to what you found, what does what does it imply to the future readers. So there should be a smooth flow of information throughout. So the next part is, now you're done with your, except the front matter, you're done with your body matter, you're done with the back matter of your manuscript. Now comes the front part of your manuscript, the front matter, which is very, very important. Yeah. So the very first thing that needs to be taken into account is the title. How should you phrase your title to get the reader's attention? Because this is the most important, I would say, element. So there are certain do's and don'ts when you phrase out your title. So what's important? Try and include, you should always try and include what is important to the research. What is it that you should include, which should be catchy, which should be easily traceable by the indexing. So the title should contain keywords for indexing. It should be concise. It shouldn't be very lengthy, or, it may have a title and a subtitle, but then you should avoid having lengthy titles. So the title should always be a concise summary of what's most important to your research. And then try and avoid asking questions in the article title, or describing methodology in the title, or using abbreviations in the title. that may misguide the readers. So after the title, after the article title, then comes the abstract, which always gives the the readers the first impression, and as you know, the first impression always counts. So this is the part that essentially most likely would be read by any reader, and only if he finds this interesting, he is going to refer to the full text of your article. If he thinks that the abstract is not phrased correctly, or it has some syntax issues, or it is not of interest to him, then probably he might not want to read the entire article and he may just switch on to something else. So be sure that when you are writing the abstract, you gain the reader's attention. So you have to give the best impression of your paper in the form of abstract to your reader. But if you do not, then they'll also not bother to download it and read it. So your abstract will be the first time that they would use to evaluate the importance of your aim, the significance of your results, and the relevance of your conclusions. So it should all be there in the abstract. And in addition, it is also the first time that they can evaluate the clarity of your writing. So they judge your writing style with just having a look at the abstract. And as I said, this is likely the only part that first would be read by anyone. So that was the first section of the presentation. Let's move on. Now you've logically structured your manuscript. Let's move on to adopting an efficient publication strategy. So what is it that you should do? So then we have the publication goals. So your goals are to publish quickly and have impact in the field. And for that, what do you need? You need to choose the most appropriate journal, and you need to communicate the study's relevance to the target audience. And to do this, you need to choose, I'll just be showing you in my subsequent slides, how can you choose the most appropriate journal and how can you communicate most effectively to the target audience. So Alpana, we'll be running a second poll here. Alpana?
Yes, I'm doing that, Mamta. The poll is already running. It's on the screen.
Okay, so
hi. Yeah.
So the second question that I would like to understand from you is that should you always aim to publish in journals holding the highest impact factor?
Okay, so Mamta, here are the results. If you're not able to see, it says 64% says yes, 21% say no, and 15% not sure.
Okay, good to know that. But then if you ask me that choosing the journal, appropriate journal which has the highest impact factor, so should you really aim at a journal that holds the highest impact factor for your research? I would say not necessarily. But many young researchers, the prospective authors, they think that their goal is to publish in the journal with the highest impact factor. But then I would say that's that's a wrong assumption, because then your goal should only be to be read widely, and that is how you can have your impact. And to do that, you have to be sure that you publish in the journal that will allow you to be read most wide. In other words, which journal will allow you to best reach your target audience? That should be the prime objective of any author. Just because you publish in a high impact journal, that doesn't mean you would get, you'd be read widely or your research would be cited widely. But then if you submit in the right journal, that may have a lower impact factor, but then that fits in to the aim and scope of the journal that you've published in. There are better chances that it would be read wide and cited well. So that's a wrong assumption that you should look for the journal that holds the highest impact factor. So when you're choosing the journal, which journal should you really target? I think there was a question that Jacco addressed just a while back, that how can you select the most appropriate journal for your research? So then first, before asking that question, you should first address that where are the findings important? As I said right in the beginning, that if you wish that your research should reach out to the worldwide audience, then you should choose an international journal. And if you have some regional research that needs to be addressed by and read by the local people, then you should aim for a regional journal. So first of all, targeting the right audience is very important. That where would your findings be relevant? Who would be the right audience for you? So the next question is, for whom are the findings relevant? So over here, you need to decide who will be interested in reading your findings. Who do you want to influence? So if you're trying to reach only to readers in your specific field, then a specialized journal is what you should aim at. But then if your research is interdisciplinary, then you should look at a broad spectrum journal, a journal that has a broad aim and scope, and then you should aim to target to publish your research in that particular journal. So the next question that you should ask is that how much accessibility do you need? Yeah, so then this would help you determine whether you should go for a subscription-based model or you need to have something like an open access journal for your research. So then subscription journals are often more established in the field because then they are older, but then they do not charge any fee to publish your article. So there is no EPC linked to subscription unless you go with the hybrid option of publishing your research in open choice. So then that again would be subjected to asking you to pay APC, the article processing charge. But if you go ahead with the subscription, the traditional model, the authors are not asked to pay to publish their articles. And if you want your findings to be more widely available worldwide, then open access would be the most appropriate publication model for you. But the benefits of open access are not restricted to increasing accessibility. And then one needs to understand that publishing in open access would again be subjected to making the payment of publishing their article. So there would be an APC associated with that. So let's move on to the benefits of open access. Open access may be useful to you for many reasons. So you may have a mandate that you need to satisfy for your grant or institution. So then that could be a mandate that you're compelled to look for an open access journal, and that is where you could look for that journal. So if it is a mandate, then definitely, maybe by the funder or the institution, so then definitely you'll have to go ahead with an open access publication. Increased accessibility is not only useful for people outside of academia, but also for academics in emerging markets. So if the universities do not have funding for subscription, open access, then again, subscription. So if your results are specifically useful for emerging markets, open access again would be important to you. And if you want to increase the number of downloads of your articles, certainly open access would again be the right choice for you. And again, copyright. If you're really very particular about retaining the copyright to your work to yourself, then again, open choice journals may help you with that. And if you want to be published more quickly online than a subscription model, then again, open choice can help you with that. And if you want to have a few restrictions on word and figure limits, then again, open choice again could be an answer to your choice. So, addressing to what Jacco has already, tried to answer to one of the questions that he had received, that how can the researcher find a suitable journal? And for that, on Springer.com and under Services tab for journal authors and editors, we do have a link for Springer's Journal Suggester that Jacco just mentioned in his presentation. And over here, the researcher can put in his article title. He can also copy and paste his abstract and then search for a suitable journal of his interest. So if you want to, then this platform would again ask you for further details if you want to put in those, like any impact factor, any specific range of impact factor that you are looking at, maybe the publication timeline, if you really want to have your article published fast. So it would ask you for some more details. And once you click on suggest journals, it's going to give you a list of journals with their details. And so the journal would have their impact factor listed. They would also have the TAT listed. I mean, the time to first decision would also be mentioned there. So depending on what suits you the best, you may just click on, any journal you'd be directed to the homepage of that journal. And if the aim and scope, you just need to go through the aim and scope of that particular journal. And if you think that your research would fit in the aim and scope of the journal, then you can choose that particular journal and submit your research to that. So there's a submit online link. The moment you would click on that, you would be directed to the online submission platform of that journal. So over there, you just need to register yourself, giving the author login, following the instructions. You should be able to upload your manuscript there. So that's about choosing the appropriate journal, logically organizing manuscript. So now we are all done. So the manuscript is ready to submit after that. Now, how to successfully submit to a journal. What is it that you should do? So now you have your manuscript ready, you've decided which journal to submit to. Then something that should always be accompanied with your manuscript is the cover letter. And there are some general rules when you formulate a cover letter, that you should always address the editor personally. So it should never be that whomsoever it may concern. You should always address the editor personally. You should mention the manuscript title very clearly, completely in the cover letter. And you should also mention the publication type. So if it is an original article or a short communication or an invited review, please make sure that you mention the publication type. You should also give the background rationale of your research. So that would again help the editor-in-chief or the editorial office to take a call on whether your manuscript fits into that journal or not. Then again, something that again should be accompanied with it is that why are your findings important? Just mention maybe a small para, just few lines of that should do. Then make sure that you mention the corresponding author details. So his complete affiliation along with his mail ID is a must, because then that is only picked up for further correspondence. And then if you're able to get some review recommendations, that again is a big plus. So you should also try, attaching those or enclosing those along with your manuscript and the cover letter. So there are a certain must-have statements, as far as publishing ethics is concerned. So you should always state that the manuscript is original and it is unpublished. So it has not been published elsewhere. So this kind of declaration statement should always be accompanied in the along with the cover letter and the manuscript. Make sure that you do not submit your manuscript to other journals. So this is something that we face very often, that there is a simultaneous submission by the author to different set of journals. So what they do is they try to save on time, and then they submit simultaneously to a set of journals, and depending on who accepts it first, they go ahead with that. So this again could be a case of misconduct and may eventually, end up in even a retracting an article if duplicate publication happens by any chance. So then the author's agreement to the manuscript or to the journal. So there should always be a consent from the authors that they agree to submit to this particular journal, and then there is no conflict of interest amongst the authors. So you should make sure that the financial disclosures are made, there is no conflict. Even if there is any disagreement between the authors for anything, all of it should be resolved first before submitting the manuscript to the journal. And the author contribution. So say author A did this, author B helped with conducting experiments. So their contribution should always be stated when you submit. Then what do reviewers look for is again something, because then you are submitting to a journal that would have a peer review process for it. So then you need to look into that. What is it that the reviewers would look for? So you've taken the reader's perspective, you've taken into account the guidelines for authors, what the journal would need, and you should also make sure that you adhere to what readers would expect from your manuscript. And some of the key points that any reviewer would look for are the rationale and objectives clearly defined? Is enough background given to understand the rationale? So this should be a part of your introduction section. Could a capable researcher reproduce the experiment? So if the results or the methodology that you adopted is authentic or not? Are the results clearly explained and in the best format? So that would come into the results section along with figures and tables. Are the findings described in context? So if you're able to relate your findings with the the methodology that you adopted. Then are the limitations discussed? So then that is where I asked that you should always try to be transparent and bring forward any limitation that you faced and how you overcome that. And are the conclusions supported? So this would again be a part of your discussion section, or it can also be drafted into a separate conclusion section. So is the literature cited appropriate? This again is very important as far as the publishing ethics part is concerned. You should make sure that a proper attribution is given to the literature as well as to the figures and tables that you adopt from somebody else. So then the last thing that they would look for is, are there any contradictions within the manuscript? So then you should try and resolve that, and make sure that there are no contradictions within the manuscript that the reviewers can catch. So again, the revision part. Just be prepared that when you're going to submit your manuscript to any journal, there are likely chances that your manuscript would come back to you asking for major or minor revisions. And then there is a way that how should you respond to the comments that have been made by reviewers. So during the revision stage, the very first rule that you should follow is that always be polite and professional. So when you're addressing to reviewer comments, even if there is an agreement or even if there is a disagreement to a suggestion made by a reviewer, just try to be polite and professional and respond to every comment. So this is again very important. So if you've received, say, 10 comments, 10 suggestions from a reviewer, and you attend only 5 of those and leave 5 unattended because you thought, they really do not imply to your manuscript or you need not make any changes. So you should never leave them unattended. Just give a reason. Even if you don't agree to what reviewer has asked for, just give a reason to why you don't agree and then move to the next. That's the correct way. Then make changes which are, in an easy to see mode. So try to work on a track on change mode. Refer to the line and page number wherever you are making any correction or revision. Maybe you can try choosing a different color font so that it is more visible to the reviewer or to the editor-in-chief, or you can also choose to highlight the text, the place where you made any changes. You can highlight the text so that it becomes more noticeable by, to the editor-in-chief and to the reviewers. So I'll briefly take you to the submission process, how it goes. Whenever any author submits his manuscript along with the cover letter in the defined format, as I just briefed, he goes to the online submission platform of any journal that he has selected, maybe with using the journal suggested tool. Once he reaches the editor, the manuscript reaches the editorial office, then it first undergoes a technical check by the journal editorial office person. So once he sees that the manuscript is complete in its entirety and all the essential elements are there, so then he sends it ahead to the editor-in-chief, who further sends it ahead to maybe to the associate editors or to the reviewers. He may assign, or even the associate editors can further invite reviewers for the manuscript. And if the reviewers find the results to be novel, the topic to be relevant to the journal, and then they see that it is scientifically sound and complete in all aspects, and it complies to the guidelines that are mentioned for the journal, which happens very rare, I would say. So if all of it is in order, then they accept it right at the first instance. But then many a times they bring forward some suggestions that they would like to see in the manuscript. It could be linguistic, it could be factual, it could be any scientific, anything. So what they do is they send it back to the author asking for revision. So once the author reverts to the revision, to the comments made by the reviewer in the desired format, the way we discussed just a while back, he sends it back to the editor-in-chief. He sends it again to the reviewer accepts it. They convey the decision to the editor-in-chief, and that is where the editor-in-chief takes a final call on that, yes, the manuscript is right every way now, and he accepts it for his journal, and then the manuscript reaches the production workflow. So at Springer Nature, what we aim at is we take a period of 3 weeks. That's our prime objective, that once any manuscript is accepted and moves to production workflow, we take a time period of 3 weeks to publish it online. So that's the prime objective of the production at Springer Nature. But then if at first you don't succeed and the manuscript comes back to you, back to the author for revision, you should always relax, revise, and resubmit the manuscript. And then there is a fair chance that your manuscript would eventually be accepted, provided it fits into the aim and scope of the journal. Yeah, it would be accepted. But even if that doesn't happen, then there's another service that is provided by Springer, and my vice president Jacco, he did refer to this service again in his presentation, which is transfer test. In this, what happens is, right at the first check, if the editor-in-chief finds that the manuscript doesn't fit into the aim and scope of the journal, so but then qualitatively it is sound, it is of sound science, it is, the quality is good. So then, rather than simply rejecting the manuscript and sending it back to the author and expecting him to reinitiate the entire process again, Springer Nature, what we have done is, we've given a tool to the editor-in-chief wherein they can, rather than rejecting, they can simply transfer the manuscript to the transfer desk. So once they do that, a message goes out to the respective author that his manuscript could not be published into the target journal, but then it has been transferred to the transfer desk, wherein the respective team, the transfer desk team, takes it up along with the author, and then the manuscript gets another chance to be published within Springer Journal. So eventually the manuscript, because it is a sound science, it would eventually find a home in another Springer Journal, if not the targeted journal. So that's again one very good service, the transfer desk, offered by Springer Nature. So once your article is published, what you should do, the publisher certainly is going to use its marketing tools and the content sharing platform to promote your article, to promote it to different conferences. But as an author, what is it that you can do? You can present your article, you can present your research at conferences that you attend. So you can interact with your peers, tell them what you did and what were you finding, and that is how you can establish collaborations and establish yourself as a scientist. And I understand, essentially this year being pandemic time, you may not be able to attend any conference in person. But then what you can do is, once your article is published, you can use different social media platforms like LinkedIn or Twitter. Then again, we have another service which is called Share. You can use this platform to promote your article. So coming on, that was about structuring a manuscript. Now let's move on to the Springer process that we offer. Yeah. So shared, just as I said in my last slide, that shared offers the authors a chance to share the content, so they can post their article in a
Hello. Hi, Mamta. We've lost your audio. Hello. Hello. Hi, Mamta. Can you hear us? Hi, everyone. It seems that we've lost Mamta's audio. Let me just check it. Please bear with us for some time. Hi, all. Sorry to keep you waiting. It seems Mamta is facing some technical problems. She's just logging in again. Please bear with us for another minute. And we are about to reach the end of this session, and we will be starting the Q&A. Thank you. Hi, Jacco. Hello, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Meanwhile, Mamta is fixing her problem. May I request you to take 1 or 2 questions from the attendees?
Yeah,
I
sure.
can
Let's continue, because otherwise people are just waiting. I'm also happy to finalize the presentation if that's helpful.
Okay, okay. If you can do that, that will be nice. Or shall I read the first 2 questions? Let's just wait for a minute for Mamta to log in. Otherwise, we'll see. So I'll announce the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, thank you. It is by Dr. Raghumani, and he says, is it compulsory to suggest the reviewers when submitting manuscripts?
That's a good question. It actually varies from journal to journal. Some journals make it mandatory to suggest reviewers. Others explicitly don't want you to suggest reviewers. So you really have to look at the author's instructions for the individual journal that you're submitting to follow up accordingly, I guess, and submit reviewers or not. I perhaps also should add that these reviewers may or may not be used at the discretion of the editor-in-chief or the editorial board. Some editor-in-chief actually use the list of suggested reviewers to make sure that they get the review done quickly, but it always should be done in a way that is within the ethical requirements of journal publishing.
Can I just add to that? I think if you do suggest reviewers, make sure that you choose or select people of an international diverse background. It helps editors and managing editors and editorial board members if you provide information about them, just not a name and an email address, but if you provide an institution, a department, maybe a link to their webpage, maybe a link to an ORCID. The more information you provide, then it helps the managing, handling editors to make their decisions. And as Jacco said, sometimes the editors may use them or may not at their discretion. But the more information you provide, the better.
Okay, yeah. Thank you,
And
Jacco.
similarly, yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
I just wanted to add, similarly, you can also add, you can mention names of people that you would not like to review your paper, where there may be competing interests, or you may be working on something where people are also working on, and you want to be the first to publish that. So you may consider that as well.
okay. Well, thank you for that. And there's another question, I think, similar to this. It says, Mr. Anirudh, how can one volunteer for review process in Springer Nature journals?
So I can take this. It's really very easy. I mean, I think the most easiest thing is to approach the editor-in-chief and say that you're looking to become a reviewer, and that you'd be grateful if they would keep you in mind. Most journals do have a reviewer pool that they use. These are people that they know regularly review for other journals, give very good feedback, but they're always looking to expand that pool and to have more people. As Mamta said in her presentation, and it's mentioned a few times, one of the hardest things is to find enough reviewers for the articles. We've already talked today about how article output is growing in so many of the disciplines that we publish in. So editors are always looking for good new peer reviewers. So I would say contact the journal, contact the editor, and they may ask for your CV and ask for other work that you've done. But really, that's, I think, the simplest way initially to put your name forward.
Okay, thank you, Pooja. Another question by Mr. Bhargav. He says, he asked, where do multidisciplinary research articles cutting across different areas fit in? Are there any journals for such kind of work, for multidisciplinary research articles?
Very much so. I think many of the journals that Peter had mentioned, Nature Communications, Scientific Reports, the communications journals, even molecular biology reports, the SN branded journals, they're very much meant to be journals that publish across different disciplines, across different areas. They're not niche, they're very broad in scope, and they would publish papers that span across different areas as long as they're sound science. But again, I think coming back to what Jacco just said a minute ago, it's very important to read the instructions for authors and the aims and scopes for different journals. As I mentioned also in my presentation, many of our journals go from covering basic translational and clinical work. Many of them do try to encompass a wide variety of different peripheral areas central to their main aims and scopes. So it really depends on how broad the paper is. If it's within oncology and cancer research, but it touches on 5 or 6 different areas, that's you can still publish within those oncology areas. Some that accept have a wider scope, but if it's across between chemistry and biochemistry, and then hinting a little bit on perhaps artificial intelligence and maybe going into genetics, if it's really covering several different areas, then maybe a much broader encompassing journal is better. So it really depends on the paper. It depends on, again, the audience that you're trying to get to. But we have a number of journals in the portfolio that would suit a multidisciplinary paper of that nature.
Okay, and thank you, Pooja. And there's another question by Mr. Anirudh again. He asked about how can one volunteer for review process. He's also asking, is there any tracking mechanism for monitoring the review process in Springer like Elsevier? Also, is there any common portal detailing the journal review time of a journal? So he's asking, is there a tracking mechanism for monitoring the review process?
There is tracking available. In my presentation, I mentioned the in-review journals. Those have a more extensive way of tracking the review of your manuscript. A lot of the journals at Springer Nature are currently with Editorial Manager, and also within Editorial Manager, you can see what the status is of your manuscript, although it is at a slightly higher level, more general level. The journal, usually on the journal website, I talked about metrics as well. One of the metrics that we carefully look after is the time from submission to acceptance and from acceptance to publication. But that gives you a feel on how long you can expect that a manuscript is under review before you hear back from the editorial office for your particular manuscript. If it takes too long, you can always reach out to the journal's editorial assistant of that journal who you are in contact with as the corresponding author to find out what the status is of your particular manuscript. So there's always ways to find out what's going on with your contribution.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you, Jacco. We have another one from Miss Vidya. She asked how to increase citation and which type of research paper will get more citation. Are there any new strategies, etc.?
How to increase citation? I think that was actually related to the last slide that that Manta had up. Like we can do a lot of promotion for your paper once it is published, and make sure it's findable in Google and the search engines, which is important for us because that generates usage. But it's important for the author as well because it generates visibility and findability. So that's crucial from our end. But at the same time, you as an author can also market your own research by using the social media platforms, by linking it from your email signature, by making sure that people in your field get to know about the paper. In some cases, when you have submitted or you're publishing in a subscription journal, the final paper ultimately is only visible to those who are subscribing to the journal. Manta had just mentioned on the last slide in her presentation about Shared It. Shared It is an initiative that Springer Nature has launched a few years ago, which gives you as an author a link that you can share with your peers, with your friends, with your colleagues, that give readers, even if they don't have a subscription to the journal, the possibility to look at the article, the full article online anyway. So that's another way to highlight your paper, make sure that it's being read and used, and consequently being cited.
Okay. Thank you, Jacco. Two more questions we'll take and then we will wind up the session. One is by Mr. Pintu. He is asking, what is the number of insect biology papers published in Springer journals? Or is it the right place to publish insect-related papers or not?
Oh, that's a very specific one. I'm not able to answer that here on the spot, I guess. Happy to look into it.
Okay.
Or make use of the Web of Science or something like that to find out what the answer is there. But I wouldn't be able to give you a detailed answer here and now.
Okay. Another question is on metric. You did talk about metric, Jacco, but that was about time to submission. But here, Ms. Shaima, she's asking, what is the metric system that judge in the competency of the journal? Is it just the impact factor or anything else also?
Anyone?
So
I think an impact factor tells you something general about the overall quality of a journal, and I think that the San Francisco DORA, the Declaration on Research Assessment, is important in this. And I think that there are some articles they receive very, very many citations, but maybe they're an average paper. I think there's I remember there was a commentary published in PLOS One, I think it was, or PLOS Biology, one of the public Library of Science journals by an author, Philip Bourne, and he'd published an article about a computational data set. And because it was a database thing, nearly everybody in the field just had to cite that paper. And he was convinced nobody had ever read the paper. And you can have other papers that don't get cited as much, but they may get downloaded more. They may get more. They may be more used in applications. They may receive more attention through news media, social media, those kind of outlets. and again can be very important. So citations is one thing. You have papers that have been retracted that still receive citations. So it's a very difficult measure, but looking at the whole picture, you might have a paper which is which receives attention on the news on CNN or on the BBC or in the Times newspapers, and that could be equally as important as a paper which is cited 1,000 times. So it's Pooja, you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, Mamta asked some really good questions about, you know, when you're writing your research, who are you trying to direct that paper at? You know, clinicians and physicians, people working in hospitals who are doctors, they generally don't have time to cite papers. They want something short and sharp that they can read on the go. So if your paper is directed to a particular group or a particular type of researcher or physician or clinician, you have to think about what that person is looking for, the time that they have. You know, the way people access content is changing all the time. You know, Jacco mentioned, you know, in our marketing teams, we look at things like Google and PubMed and Scopus and all these services where we try to get our papers maximum visibility. But that again just proves that the way people access content in today's day and age is very different than it was 20 years ago. Very few people now sit and read a journal from cover to cover. So people accessing content has changed. The way people read content has changed. And so it's all about thinking about getting to the right people. Citations are very important, but so is, and I said before, there's different ways of measuring the impact of a paper. Downloads and how many people read that article is also just as important, but also sharing it with the right group of people so that you're getting your work to those people, whether they cite it or not. Making sure that they read it and they have access to it is just as important. So I think we would consider all of those things to be important and things to think about.
Okay, thank you, Pooja and Jacco. Last question of the day, just one which we have received from Mr. Chandra. He says, I am into medical data analysis like MRI, CT scan, and PET CT genomics in cancer. Can I send all my medical related paper to Biomedical Engineering Journal?
So I think, again, it's probably very difficult for us to answer that today. It really depends on the scope of the paper. It depends on where it's focused at. We do have imaging journals as well that would, you know, look at it from a different perspective. So I think what I would suggest is to use the journal suggester for each of the different types of paper, because depending on their scope and the direction and their focus, there may be a number of different options for you, but there are definitely options there. Maybe in one journal, there may be several journals. So I would say don't limit your options, because I think that there are different avenues to explore. So I would start with using the journal suggester, but we definitely do have a number of journals for those types of papers, definitely.
Okay, thank you, Jacco, Pooja, and Peter for this Q&A round. I think we need to do a hard stop now, because our attendees, we had to stop at 5, but we started a little late, so we it's 10 minutes past. And to all the attendees, it is I'm really sorry for the technical issue Mamta faced, and I think she's joined back. I would invite her for the closing remarks, but before that, I would like to mention that if you have any questions regarding this webinar or any other, please write. You can write an email to my ID, which is alpana.sagwal@springernature.com. That ID I'm showing on the screen right now. I hope you all can see that. Yeah, and another thing, like I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, that this is a 3-webinar series, and we will be conducting 2 more webinars, and that's on 9 September at 4 p.m. and the other is on 16 September. So the slide right now shows the title, And we will be sharing with you the links over email to all the attendees who were with us today so that you can register. You have to register for these two separately with a different link. So, and also a recording of this webinar we will be sharing with all of you tomorrow via email. We will send you e-certificates within 1 week of today. And after the webinar ends, we will request you to provide us your feedback about how you like the session and any other suggestions if you have to make. So that is all. I would like to hand over the stage to Dr. Didi Lal for a vote of thanks. But Mamta, maybe you can just come for quickly if you can now put on your audio and you can just say some closing remarks since you actually ended this due to a technical problem. Yeah.
So first of all, I would like to apologize. But then before I do that, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Am I
very
audible?
well.
Okay, so please accept my sincere apologies. I was just, keeping my fingers crossed all through the webinar that my network shouldn't go off. And then that was the reason I was trying to save my bandwidth and I didn't put on my camera. But then Jacco, you're quite familiar with it. It happens to me very often, yeah, in a call. So please excuse me for this. I was just trying to finish my presentation. I was towards the end of it. Just 2 more slides were left, but then I think Jacco, you've almost covered all of it. And when I resumed, then all of you were already there on the questionnaire. So my sincere thanks and gratitude to all of you for addressing all those concerns on my behalf. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Alpana, and thank you all the audience, all the listeners for bearing with the network issue. And I'm really sorry for that.
Yeah, no problem, Mamta. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation you gave. And to all the attendees who have joined with us, just to tell you, we will be sharing with you the slides that Mamta was presenting. So on and on, you didn't miss anything. And as I mentioned, if you have any queries, feel free to write to me. I will be able to connect you to the right editor for any questions if you have. And I will now like to invite Dr. Didi Lal for the vote of thanks. So you may unmute yourself and the stage is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alpana. And sometimes technical issue happen, so there is no problem, and there is no problem, which is happen every time in online mode. Okay, so now I would like to give a vote of thanks. I hope this webinar will be very much useful for the all participants and those who are interested to write the paper. And if they understand that review process, so they will avoid that plagiarism and other manuscript. They should know how to write and all the great speakers they are covered. So all the like Springer Nature journals, open access journals, okay, authors self-archive manuscript process, manuscript transfer process, peer review process, blockchain peer review, how to publish, how to write, and how to submit the articles. So basically, these all are covered by the eminent speakers. I thank you to all the speakers, and I hope this webinar will be useful for all professionals, those who are interested to write, those who are interested to submit their articles in the well-known journals. Okay, and thankful to all our professionals, students, and they will be much benefited. But I would like to thank the speaker, Dr. William Curtis, Executive Vice President, Dr. Jacco, Flipsen, Vice President, Mr. Peter Butler, Editor Director, Ms. Pooja Aggarwal, Editor Director, and Dr. Mamta Kapila. So change executive editor, all are from the Biomedical and Life Sciences journal. Leadership team is Springer Nature for the excellent presentation and speech. So my gratitude to Springer Nature for collaboration. Thank you to all participants, all speakers, members of the Springer, especially Mr. Vikas Kumar, Director Springer Nature, and Ms. Alpana Aggarwal, faculty members, scientists, researchers, DeLCON Nodal research from the all 35 DeLCON organizations, library professionals, and students for attending this successful webinar. Our next webinar will be on the 9th September, which we will share the information through email. And again, thank you to all participants for this successful webinar. Now we are closing the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you so much for your guidance throughout, Dr. Lal. That was really good support you provided in putting up this event together. Thank you all. Thank you, Jacco, Peter, Pooja, Mamta, for staying put and for really giving insightful presentations today. Thank you. Thank you. We'll have a great rest of the day. Thank you, everyone. We're closing this webinar now.
Thank you.